Hello there, and welcome to the tour of the Trainee class miner, the fifth vehicle in my Wimpomania line of vehicles. My name is Wimpoman, and I am the chief designer, chief builder, chief architect, and chief dumbass behind the Trainee update project. That's right, this is another updated vehicle built before the game was 1.0. And before I show you around the updated Trainee, I'm first going to show you around the original vehicle. And here is the original Trainee over here. And it might look quite similar to how the new one looks, but there is a bit of a giveaway on the underside. Yes, it was a HV. It's now not. It's now an SV. But the original was a HV. Now the reason I've changed is because the first run hover vehicles series of vehicles has a whole bunch of HV miners, and the Wimpomania line also has a HV miner. The Menti, it's the one before this, the Menti. For some reason I always think of manatee when I see that word, but there you go. So this was the original. Like I said, it was built before the game was 1.0, so there was no such thing as CPU, there was no such thing as weights and volumes, so no container extensions and controllers. These cargo harvest boxes down here were the way you stored what was being drilled. The back wall also had 4 constructors. Again, there was no such thing as CPU, so... Wait, really? Even with 4 constructors? That's less than the new one. Mind you, the new one does have more thrusters. And is bigger. Anyway, right, so the original Trainee, which is a HV... You might even be able to tell if you've already seen the updated Initiate class shuttle, the second vehicle in my Wimpomania line. So this was just a HV variant of the original Initiate. Now it is not. It isn't a variant of the Initiate, and I didn't want to do another variant because it already has 3 variants. The full shuttle with 5 seats, the personal shuttle with a seat and a bed, pretend, make-believe, and then an ambulance with a pretend stretcher type thing, and painted white and red. Well, I didn't want to do another variant of the Initiate, especially since I really ought to have done that variant in the same video as the other 3, and I didn't think about it, but it's okay. I was okay coming up with a new design. So there you go. That's the original. Now, I am going to show you real quick, before I start the tour proper, the differences. So it is in the Wimpomania style, with so the cockpit sort of goes vertically rather than... I mean, as you can tell, there were some that went vertically anyway, but... the starter class and the beginner class, which I haven't done yet, they go horizontally around the front, whereas this one being sort of a utility craft, I went vertically again. And it has 4 nacelles instead of the usual 2, and there isn't going to be many ships in the Wimpomania line with 4 nacelles, but I thought it would be interesting to do that. Kept the 2 turrets, as you can see. It's a bigger vehicle, but you will see why when I get to the components and stuff. Rightio, so that's the end of that segment. Let's start the tour proper, starting with its role and its task equipment. So, as I'm sure you can guess, the role, as I've said, is a miner, so it's intended to mine, obviously. And to facilitate that task, it has 6 of the SV laser drills, 3 on each side in that arrangement. It also has a 6,500 SU ore and wood container, the controller of which you can see through the door there. Now normally I kind of say you can sort of count the thrusters, because without them it can't move. However, this time you most definitely can count the thrusters. So I've thought about this being able to mine into the ground of a planetary body like this, rather than just being in orbit and mining asteroids. So to help you mine ground deposits, not only have I given it a reasonably decent lift capacity, I've also given it roughly the same amount of reverse thrust as it has forward thrust. That way, if you're down in a hole and you cannot turn around, you can at least reverse out, or you should be able to. As we get to the thrusters and stuff, you'll see there isn't quite as much reverse as there is forward, but it's close enough. Right, that's the end of that segment, and it leads me on to the next segment, which is its propulsion handling and lift capacities. Right, I've learnt from my previous mistakes about letting it hover off the ground and making lots of noise, so we're just going to have to put up with the ripple effect of the ground you can see between us and the ship, because that's better than the noise, I think. Right, starting with its forward thrust then, we have 7 mediums and 2 smalls. There's the one small, there's the other. The rest you can see are mediums. 4 on the backs of the nacelles, 3 on the stern. Braking and reverse, we have the 7 mediums, but no smalls. So 1 on the front of the bottom nacelles, 2 on the front of the top, and then an extra cheeky one on the roof there. Lateral thrust, we have 4 medium tier 1s and 4 small tier 1s. I looked at those the other way round, but I'm sure you understand. Those are small because they say S, and those are mediums because it's M. Well, regardless of what I'm saying at the time that I look at them. Shush. Hang on. Signals. Right, that's lateral. So descent thrust, pointing upwards, pushing it down, is 2 medium tier 1s at the front, and then 8 smalls in the top of the upper nacelles. And then ascent thrusters, on by default, we have 12 medium tier 1 thrusters. Those 4 there, the matching ones on the other side, and the 2 on each side of the bow. And then max lift, we have 2 mediums, that's that one and that one, and then these 6 small ones in the middle here. It also has 4 RCSs, because as you can tell, I wasn't able to really get many in the front in order to help it pitch, roll and yaw. Well, pitch is okay-ish, but yaw, there's nothing at the front pushing the nose sideways, so RCSs had to be used. Okay, so mobility, starting with its maneuverability, and this is with max lift off. So it'll accelerate forwards at 30 meters per second squared. Backwards it'll go at 27, laterally is 22, 21 descent, 46 ascent. With max lift on, the ascent is increased to 64. As for its agility, yaw is 36 degrees per second, pitch is 46, and roll is 79. Actually, roll is very good. So pitch and yaw should change, possibly roll as well, actually. So 36, 46, 79. 36, 46, 79. So that's 30, that's the same. 46, that's gone up by 4 to 51. And 79 to 85, that's an extra 6. So, meh. However, the lift has gone up to 64 from the 46 that it was. Let's give you a quick look at how it flies. I'm going to turn pilot mode on, just because it's a space armor ship. I'm also not going to bother going into orbit like I would normally do and show you what the speed is up in space, because as we know, we can now get up to maximum speed. It just takes a longer time if there isn't enough thrust or something. is what I understood the new changes to be. So there you go. It's not terrible at all, but it's, you know, dry weight. You're not full of 6.5k of SU of Sathium. Let's turn back around. Oh, lift capacities. You probably saw actually on the LCD screen, but I'm going to go through it anyway. I might as well. So, with max lift on, she will operating up to 6.5 G. That is dry weight, of course. So with nothing in the boxes, but if you get stuck on a high G planet, you can empty this and still take off. I mean, you might have to leave some stuff behind perhaps, but at least you can escape. It will lift 72.1 tons in 4G. Now the vehicle itself weighs 44.4, which means you can lift an additional 27.8 tons. Right, that's the end of that segment. So the next segment is going to be her power, fuel and air. Right, as usual with my tours, I'm going to tell you about this now and then show you where all this stuff is later when I go inside. So power, she has 6 large power generators. Fuel is 19 large fuel tanks and a pentaxid tank. O2, she has 8 O2 tanks, 2 ventilators and 2 compartments. The cockpit at the front and the cabin at the rear. Well, midships actually, technically. Okay, that's the end of that segment. So the next segment is going to be her weapons, defences and construction. Weapons. Well, as you can see, because you can't retract them on an SV, which is a shame because my rules say that civilian ships by law should have retractable turrets, and unfortunately you can't with a SV. Whatever. 2 Gatling turrets. They are set to what I consider to be my point defense configuration. They will target NPCs, players and drones, so enemy infantry-ish, and also the weaponry of SVs. Defences. Well, she isn't really armoured. There's a few blocks inside that help protect things, but it's not brilliant. And any blocks that do protect anything inside is just steel. She does, however, come with a shield, so you can raise your shields if you're under attack. That will help you get out of trouble, hopefully. And then construction, as I've been doing recently, here is an unpainted version so you can see what she's made of. Tongue-tied. Now, of course, I say unpainted, but I have painted some of it. I painted the steel, that kind of mid-grey. The hardened steel structural frame you can see there is painted black. And the small amount of carbon composite you can see is painted this hexagonal pattern and a whiter colour. Let's get a good look. So this is the interior. You can see the frame goes through the floor there. The structural frame also goes round the bottom of the nacelles, but nowhere else. Around the nacelles, I mean. Oh, apart from there. But not matching on the other side. It just goes around the thrusters down there. So there you go. That's how she's made and built and stuff. Yarp. Okay, that's the end of that segment then. So the next segment is going to be her resource gathering, production and storage. Well, as I said at the top, she has 6 laser mining drills, so she has some resource gathering. She also has some production. You may have seen it as I was going in and out, but there is a constructor just there. Oh yeah, of course, I turned the signals off, didn't I? So there is a constructor in there as well. And then storage, as I said before, the Aurum wood harvest container is 6,500 of your SUs. She does have a 375 ammo container just there. a 375 cargo container for your bits and bobs and odds and ends just there. She also has 3 small cargo boxes, 2 mini fridges, and a and 2 armor lockers. Right, that's the end of that segment then. So the next segment is going to be the interior layout and any remaining devices. As usual, I shall start with the any remaining devices on the outside. So it comes as usual, fully flight regulation lighting compliant. We have nav lights. These are the red on the port, the white on the stern, and the green on the starboard lights. There is also the illuminated orientation panels that act as its formation lights to help it fly in formation with other craft. We have running lights that you can see slowly flashing away. They will indicate to any observer that the ship is powered. What else? Flight strobes that are manual. Those are the bright white flashing lights you will see on the wingtips of planes. There is a signal. I will show you that later on. Anti-collision beacons. They're red on top and they're yellow on the bottom. Again, I'll show you this later on, but they come on automatically with the thrusters. And we have some hazard beacons that flash away when you get your drills out. All of the flashy flashes I will talk about at the end. If you don't like them, I'll tell you how to turn them off, just in case you need some help with that. What else? So we have some registration displays and stuff. So we have the nameplate here on the sides. There's obviously a matching one mirror image on the other side. So this is the class and the full registry here. In case you care, Wimpo Manufacturing, Utility Miner. I was so tempted to call it a civilian utility miner. So tempted. Wimpo Manufacturing 05, the 5th vehicle of... Wimpomania. Blah, 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 blah. So the 5th vehicle of Wimpomania. And then this will be the incremental count of which trainee class this one happens to be. Now, as I always say with these, this should be whatever number is... so once you've subscribed, it should be whatever number that is plus 1. Because obviously I have 1 and I'm not subscribed because I'm the builder. But of course it doesn't really matter. So feel free to put anything there or leave it the number symbols. It doesn't really matter. Now that's the full registry, and here is the main registry. As you can probably tell, it's just that bit from the end, the second half. Again, you can change those. Oh, in case you want to know, that projector is for the name and class. The class and full registry. Then that one there is for the one on the bottom nacelle. And the one underneath here is for the one on the bottom of the upper nacelle. Yeah, that's that. Oh, I always forget to tell you about the landing gear. There are landing gear. Of course there are landing gear or docking pads. Okay, let's turn the signals back on, and I'm sure you can tell by the fact that I turned the signals off to stop the door and ramp going. So the 2 ramps, the door, that ground light are on that motion sensor just there. Obviously the other side is a mirror image. There's the motion sensor there. As we come in, we've got O2 stations accessible just inside the door. Now it was actually accessible from the outside, but I put blocks there for a reason, and I now can't remember what it was. Yeah, whatever. There was a reason I put the blocks there, and it wasn't to protect the O2 station, because as we discussed in a previous tour, the O2 stations have hit points of 150, and each of these, well, a full steel block is 50 each. So actually that is 50 hit points more than 2 steel blocks, and obviously those aren't full blocks. But I had to cover it up for some reason. I think it was just because it was white and it was supposed... Yeah, that's it! The black band starts these 2 blocks, the middle of the canopy and the bottom block of it. This arrangement here is all black, even underneath and at the top. But then the 2 block band continues up to the door. The door then turns it into a 3 block band, where it then becomes a 2 block band after it and goes across the nacelles, and then there it's still a 2 block band of black is why those are there. It looked weird, the white O2 station breaking up the black band. Okay, a cargo box, a CPU extender, matching on the other side. Oh yeah, because I just bumped my head on it, you will bump your head on these sensors, and in fact the lights which are there. Has that changed? Can you walk under them now? You can walk under them now. I swear I used to bump my head on those lights. Constructor there. Mirror image on the other side is actually 2 fridges. There's the container controller for the harvest box, the ore and wood container. Pentaxid tank is there for ease of accessibility. The ventilator for the rear cabin is there, surrounded actually on all 3 sides by the O2 by the O2 tanks. Obviously you can't see the ones above those, but they are there. That's the motion sensor for in here. Armor locker, place to sit to put your boots on. Boots on. Ammo container. Again, as I said earlier, a cargo container for your weapons and whatnot, small arms, ammo, that kind of thing. And the projectors there for the LCD screens that you can see in front of the cockpit seat. Oh, and light, and ventilator there, because there is a force field. You might be able to just make out with YouTube's compression. There's a force field cutting off the cockpit from the rear cabin, so that if you take damage at the front for whatever reason, at least you can come in the back here to breathe if the threat is gone. If not, then sorry. Okay, now I'm going to turn God mode back on and show you some of the other stuff. So on top of the ventilator is the gravity generator. There is artificial gravity in here. And then if we go into the back and into the container extensions, you can see what the container extensions, or the space that it takes up. There's also one in that space there, and also one at the front of that space there, and matching on the other side. As you can see, this ship is warp drive capable. Where's the warp drive? There's the 4 RCSs. There's the fuel tanks, I'm sure you can guess. Oh, there's the rear 3, in case you care, of the O2 tanks. There's the shield. If we go through the warp drive, you'll see the 6 generators are there and there. Underneath that is the detector, the Wi-Fi and the core, which is also accessible through these shutter ramps at the back, in case you want to interact with anything yourself manually. One of the fuel tanks is at the back, so again you can interact with that manually if you like. And the 3rd cargo box. I'm pretty sure that is everything. Yes, it is. Okay, so that's the end of that segment. So the next segment is going to be her shortcuts and signals. Starting with the device group shortcuts, as usual, main propulsion is the first one. That'll turn on all of the thrusters except the max lift ones and the RCSs. Oh, and the anti-collision beacons that I mentioned earlier, and now you can see them flashing away. They are. Then of course max lift will turn on the other lift thrusters, those 6, that one and that one, in case you're skipping around in the video. Next one down we have the drills. Loud. 6 drills, as I said earlier, of the laser flavour, because there is no mechanical ones on an SV, and the hazard beacons to make it look like flashy. There's 3 on each side so that it looks like you have one light on each side that is itself flashing 3 times, is the idea. Next one down is empty. Artificial gravity is the next one for turning on and off the gravity generator. Then we have production for turning on and off the constructor. So if you accidentally leave it on, you can turn it off with a flick of a switch. Finally is air vents in that column. So I'm going to go through this just in case this is the first tour of mine you have seen. But I'm going to go through it quickly in case it isn't. So if we have a look at the power left and turn oxygen off, that doesn't change, because although it sucks in all of the air and doesn't blow any more into the interior, the ventilator block itself is still on. So if you turn that off, the power left changes, so you can save some power if you are in a breathable atmosphere of a planet. Moving on then to the custom signals. As usual, the top one is power save. So, there is a LCD screen that tells you what that does. Turns off, when you turn it on, it turns off the Wi-Fi, the motion sensors, the cockpit displays, and the registry displays. So not much. Right, next then we have turrets and shields. Turns on the 2 turrets and the shields. I haven't bothered wiring any extra, any of the 6 generators to that signal. I do that with military craft because I think military craft would be more complicated than a civilian craft. Next 2 down, nav lights and flight strobes. I will demonstrate those. So as I said earlier, red on the port, white on the stern, and then green on the starboard navigation lights. And you can see them blinking away. There's one there, one there. One there, yeah, and then flashy with the bright. I've given you a headlight switch. I keep I keep swapping between giving you headlight switch and not. But I realised, so one of my tour videos a while ago, I said I used to do that and I can't remember why. I figured it out when I was building this because I had a need to turn off the headlights and I didn't want to get into the seat to do it. So of course you can get in, and I don't know if it's L by default, but for me it's L on the keyboard will turn on and off the headlights. But I wanted to do it without getting into the seat. So now I can. That's why they're there. Oh, so the bottom ones point diagonally down. These top ones point diagonally up. Now, if you look behind those, you will see ones that point straight forward. They do shine through those, which is nice. So you get a nice field of view in a hole or looking at a, face planting an asteroid in space. Right, finally, we have the last one. Oh, there's an empty one there. I should have said an empty one there as well, but... Oh, I always forget to explain why. It's because all of my ships, whether it's an SV or a CV, I like to have my signals and device groups shortcuts in the same places. So, on ships that don't have drills, that would be custom 3, but this one does. So it is drills, for example. Finally is closed shutters, and this is why they don't all open up at once. So if you are interacting with this stuff and then you leave those shutters open, I wanted to give you a way that when you got into this view, if you then noticed they were open, that you could close them without getting out of your seat. And of course it will only close them, it won't open them again. Okay, that's the end of that segment. So the next segment is going to be her CPU and upgrading. So, in case you are skipping around in the video, although I've literally just showed it, the core is there. It is tier 3 CPU, and as I showed you earlier, the extenders are there and there. I have faced them different ways for just decoration, just so that they didn't look exactly the same on both sides, in case you're wondering. That was on purpose. Now, CPU usage, it is slightly over 40,257 out of the 40,000. Now, that does make it 98. That's the HV. I was like, a buh? So, it is 98% efficient. So, when I put in those 3 force fields, or before I put in the 3 force fields and that extra ventilator, it was actually 99% efficient. And I think they come to... So were they 2 each and that's 1? So the ventilator is 1 each and the force field is 2 each, yeah. So 2, 4, 6, so that's 7 CPU just there. And that took it over the threshold from 98%, from 99% efficient to 98. Grr. But never mind. Okay, as for upgrading, there is no inbuilt upgrade path. There is no empty slots earmarked for anything. I didn't want to do that with this because being an SV miner, the SV drills are actually... That was the wrong button. There? No. 3. F3. F3. I missed it. No. So, the Tier 2 laser drills are level 20. So, considering you would have to be at max level anyway to spawn this in, I didn't see any reason to take stuff out and leave it upgradable so that it was a lower level when you spawned in, because it wasn't going to be, thanks to those drills. Maybe you could argue, maybe I could have left the drills off and then allowed the user to put weapons there if they wanted, and this might have been a decent-ish starter SV without the shield with a warp drive. Make the shield an upgrade. But I didn't think about it until literally just then. That doesn't mean, of course, that you can't personalise. I don't know what you would do with this, but you can personalise it to your heart's content. I mean, if you want to rip some of this out and replace it with something else, so by all means you can. Not sure what you would do with it. Normally I have some idea, but not with this one. Oh, this is part of the personalisation, I would say. It comes just like the Mentee before it, the WM04. This comes with a mining orange colour as part of its palette, so you can paint it orange as well if you would like. As you saw, you just click on that and click on the colour, then click on the something that's blue on here, and it'll replace the blue with the orange, or vice versa. That's the end of that segment, so the next and last segment is going to be other info. So, first of all, something I've been trying to remember recently is the damage texture. Of course, if you've already seen this, you can ignore it. I do this as a damage texture, which, in case you care, is that texture and that colour, like a burnt orange, and in my opinion that looks like smouldering metal. So as you lose a block to damage, what the surface of the blocks that exposes, in my opinion, looks damaged. Whereas if you had them as just... that doesn't look damaged to me. So that's why I do it, for the immersion of being damaged. Okay, that's that fixed. Next thing I want to talk about is turning off the flashes. I mentioned this earlier. Some of these are fairly easy. I'm going to talk about the running lights first. These ones that are always on. They are very easy to fix. If you don't like them, you scroll down to the regulation lighting things, which are right at the bottom. You find running lights and you go, eh. And then that's it. They will never come on again. They're not set to a signal or a device group shortcut. So once you turn them off, that's it. They're off. Now, if you don't... the flight strobes are easy. Those are the bright white flashing ones. Well, they're manual anyway, so you just don't turn them on. The nav lights don't flash, but if you are annoyed by them, again, just don't turn them on. So, the anti-collision beacons, red ones on top and yellow ones on the bottom, are also quite easy to fix. Actually, I'm going to do this with main propulsion on, because it's basically the same as what we've just done, and then an extra step. However, if you do it with them off, you skip the extra step. So if you have the thrusters on, you will need to turn off the block group anti-collision. Of course, if the thrusters are not on, you don't need to deactivate them. And then you simply remove the shortcut here. Yeah, that's it. They will no longer come on when you turn on and off the thrusters. Yeah. I'm going to turn them back on, however. Anything else? Oh, aye, the hazard beacons. So, as I showed you earlier, when you turn the drills... I don't know why the first click didn't work, but I was expecting loud. So, aye. With the orange flashy. So, actually, it's exactly the same as I just showed you. So, you go to the hazard beacons. If you've got the drills on, you deactivate the block group. If the drills are not on, the hazard beacons won't be on, so you won't need to. And then it's simply removing the shortcut. Yeah. And then that's it. They won't come on ever again either. So there we go. One more thing is the naming convention. Oh, hang on. Loud. The names of the Wimpomania line of vehicles. So I have explained this in some of the other tours, but I'm going to cover it as well just in case it's the first you've seen. So all the vehicles in the Wimpomania line. So it started with the starter class shuttle pod that was built in an old game called Star Maid. It was called, if you want to know why that was called starter class, you'll have to go watch the tour of that. But because I consider myself a noob when it comes to building, I called all of the ships in the Wimpomania line that followed the same design philosophy as the starter class synonyms of either newbie, or someone who is new at something, or someone who is the first to do something, which is why you'll find things like a pioneer, or the initiate, or the freshman, for example, that kind of stuff, cadet. So it's either synonyms or synonyms of the synonyms is the idea. That's why they're all named that, in case you were wondering. One last thing to do, something I always do, or unless I forget, and that is to publish to the workshop. Keep it private, of course, so I can do the description and images. There we go. Right, so thank you very much for taking an interest in the trainee class SV Minor. I hope you get some use out of her, and hopefully I will see you in another video for a different build. So thank you again, and goodbye.